So this is actually my first ever Modern Prelim, and all things considered, I think I did pretty well. I'm going to showcase all the games here, and if you want to see more videos like this, more tournaments, I guess, outside of the leagues, let me know in the comment section down below. That's the only way I can know that you want to see some higher level play with some Modern Mill. Enjoy. Round 1, game 1. The hand opens up pretty good. I got some removal, but my opponent opens up with a Steam Vents into a Soulscar Mage. So, okay, we got ourselves some prowess. So I have the removal, easy peasy, and I have the Drown in the Loch after as well. And I honestly could have waited, but I think having myself be defenses down is better. They may commit more spells, which they did. So I can drown their Swift Spear and hope they don't have a third threat. They metamorphose into a Sprite Dragon, which is unfortunate. So we don't have many options right now. And I'm actually going to dig relatively deep. Hopefully I can hold up the Spell Pierce as well. I have double Preordain, trying to dig for some type of removal spell, and ultimately I actually get there. Not bad. I fetch, fatal, push it away. I play into the Spell Pierce, essentially forcing them to have it there, where I don't want their spell count to be super high on their turn, but they have an Underworld Breach and they manage to recur some threats here as well, which is really unfortunate. These Underworld Breaches end up being MVPs throughout this match, and it's a really good card in Prowess, especially being a non-creature spell. So I shock in my Watery Grave, which may or may not have been a great idea, but I want to hold up the Otawara. That's essentially the idea here. But I only take one, which is fine, I guess. Now I'm going to cycle a Fractured Sanity, trying to draw into more gas. I find more lands. And the Flooded Strand off the top. This is just not going great in terms of a first hand. Now, if they go all in for it, I have an Otawara and I have a Spell Pierce. So I'm going to Spell Pierce the Underworld Breach just to make them pay out here. I don't want any other cards coming out of their hand. Just going to be the Underworld Breach and the 0-cost stuff out of their graveyard. So the Baubles and the Lava Darts. So really constricting them on what they can play. Because if I'm going to bounce, if I'm going to Otawara, maybe the Sprite Dragon, I really need the other threat to not be able to kill me in this case. Effectively, I'm at 8. I have to fetch with the Polluted Delta to do anything here. So I'm going to fetch. I'm going to do exactly that. I am then going to Otawara away the Soulscar Mage. I feel like with that, it comes in without haste. So it's a better bounce than the Sprite Dragon. Unfortunately, I do not draw the removal spell. I Tasha's as a Hail Mary. Unfortunately, they're left with 8. I think this was still the right call. Honestly, on their turn, they could have just brought back the Sprite Dragon and potentially just cast some more spells. I think the Soulscar Mage was the right call. Let me know in the comment section down below. Let's go to game 2. The real question here is, I know that this is an unfavored matchup, but can I force the game 3, right? I want to make my opponent work for it, and I want to bust my chops here. So Lightning Bolt the Hedron Crab, which is exactly what I wanted, actually. That's a bolt not coming at my face, and that's a big win here. It's not like a prismatic ending coming at the crab. The Lightning Bolt is damage to your life. So I'm going to drown the Soulscar Mage, which was good bait here. The Monastery Swift Spear comes in after the fact. So I do manage to find the fatal push for it, and I pass here. If I need to cycle the Fractured Sanity, I will. I'll fetch away to grab an island to thin out my deck a little bit, and then at this point, really, I just have to go for something. I'm going to play out the Tasha, see if I can bait out some type of counter spell, because look, it exiled like 20 plus cards here, so it would have been a really good Spell Pierce hit or a Flusterstorm hit if they had it. Now, if they do have the Flusterstorm, they can't hit the Ensnaring Bridge. So that was my call there. I'm like, okay, maybe they didn't have it at the time or they didn't value it, but they might have Fluster. So play out the Ensnaring Bridge. We're in a pretty good spot. The more spells they play into the Sprite Dragon, the larger it becomes. So they have to essentially go for like one pretty big swing here, right? Like they're going to Mutagenic Growth, hit me for 5. I'm at 8, but that Sprite Dragon is not attacking anymore. So they need some type of interaction spell for this Ensnaring Bridge or just other threats in general. Now, I'm going to play the Field Ruin. I'm going to take out these Steam Vents, because if you're going to notice that last search, they weren't able to find a land. So I know they have no more basics. I play that. I play the Crypt Incursion, essentially sealing this game out. I'm gonna have the win next turn. Let's go to game 3. I always like forcing game 3s in the kind of bad matchups. It puts your opponents on the back burner. Now, I arguably could have kept a better hand in this case, but I do have a Fatal Push and I have a way to redraw. I have a couple lands, including some Field of Ruin, so I didn't want to push too hard. Now, I shock in a Watery Grave. I didn't want to fetch, but maybe the fetch was a better idea, but one less life. Anyway, play out the crab, mill them out some more. I honestly could have just played the drown here, but I was really worried again of the Spell Pierce or the Flusterstorm. I'm like, okay, I need to wait, right? Because I know those cards exist based on their exile piles from the previous game. They bolt away my crab, which is fine. That's 3 damage not coming at me. Now they're tapped out. Now I can start hitting some things. So that's great. Now I'm going to drown the Sprite Dragon because that becomes large permanently, and forcing more spells. So the Underworld Breach comes out. Again, MVP of this game. I feel like I actually just lost to Underworld Breach and not the creatures themselves, because they just continue to go absolutely hard. They're gonna push out like 3 baubles here, right? Like, and they have some lava darts in yard, which is kind of the tough part when it comes to playing mill against decks like this. Lava dart is the bane of our existence, which is why Ashiok was actually not a bad sideboard card behind Bridge, though. You really need to exile away their graveyard. Anyway, fetch, tap that in, breach goes away. I'm at 7 and I need to draw a removal spell here, or pretty much is done. They have a full grip at this point. I've managed to somehow rip the Fatal Push. I'm telling you, the top decks, especially the situation where I drew bridge last game, insane. All right, so good. I'm surviving another turn. I'll take it for what it is. They shock in that Manamorphose and then Expressive Iteration. Now, the iteration is unfortunate, but they don't draw into a threat just yet. So that's good. I'm a little bit into the clear. I have double Fractured Sanity, and at this point I'm going to cycle because I don't want to just start casting things out and then miss out on an opportunity to draw some removal. Now, this might have been the bad call. I could have brought them down to about 20 cards, and then I could have Fractured Sanity and maybe gone for something there. But at this point, I cycle my Fractured Sanity again, trying to find some type of removal spell. I find the Hedron Crab. This wouldn't have been able to block the Sprite Dragon. At this point, they have lethal. It looks like my call was the right call anyway. Again, with the full grip on their side, it would have been a hard thing to beat. But hey, that's round 1. Better things to come in the future rounds. I told you there's better things to come, but I do start off with the mulligan off the rip. Now, Hedron Crab, Archive Trap, Fractured Sanity, it's fine. It's okay. Giver of Runes shows me that, hey, you know what? This is actually going to be a relatively favored matchup. And I am playing Jace the Perfected Mind. Now, something a little different. It is a one of, you'll see my list down below. It's fine. They Stoneforge Mystic. They actually get themselves a Colossus Hammer, which is kind of unfortunate because I'm thinking they have the Cauldra in their deck, which is going to be a little problematic if I find the Tashas. Now, I can't drown anything. I have to remember that Giver of Runes provides protection. So I have to go for like a counter on something, which is great here. The Pure Steel Paladin is a great thing to counter. They're going to play the Colossus Hammer, which is fine if they have another Pure Steel, but ultimately I'm like, okay, they have to have another Pure Steel. They definitely have the Colossus Hammer, so I have to work with the known information. I'm going to Field of Ruin the Infect Island. I don't need that going off with the Colossus Hammer. At least give myself another turn. I can cycle away a Fractured Sanity here, and they do happen to have another Pure Steel Paladin, so that's perfectly fine. They have the Shadow Spear. That's 3 artifacts. Everything equips for 0. Now, ultimately, they have 18 cards left here, and I have to work with that. I'm not going to block. I'm still at 7 life. I can still win this game. I find myself a land, and that's exactly what I needed. I needed that fetch land, Fractured Sanity. GG's the game out here, and that's where we're going to end things off. Let's go to game 2. My opponent's able to put up a fight, and you'll see that I have Soul Guide Lantern just in case that they have a shuffle effect. Now, there aren't a lot of mill decks in the prelim, so I wouldn't be surprised if they're not prepared, but this is a brutal game. Look at Strict Proctor. Are you kidding me? In a double crab hand? Spoiler alert, folks, I will not be able to get a single crab trigger off this game, let alone, I mean, the Soul Guide trigger is not going to work, but let's see if these 2 Tasha's Hideous Laughters can't get there. The problem is I can't use the crabs to get out the high CMC stuff, right? Like double Strict Proctor. It's getting ridiculous. It's getting ridiculous. I'm like, okay, maybe if I get to like 4 mana, then I can like at least keep like half of my triggers on like fetch lands, or like I can maybe keep some of my triggers. I do have to tap out completely to do that though, which means I'm not casting my Tashas. So let's start with the Tashas. Let's let them draw a card with Esper Sentinel, and let's see how far we get. 16 cards isn't that bad. Let's show the exile pile. We have some Tashas here. So we do manage to find some amount of Solitudes in the Cauldron, which is great for any future targets. The Pure Steel Paladin, no amount of artifacts, it's really just the Esper Sentinel, which is fine. Now I have the other crab. Is that really valuable to play with a 3rd Strict Proctor? I never realized how absolutely insane this card is, and I don't blame them. Hey, you know what? Look, it works against the elementals, so I can't hate the hustle. But these Strict Proctors are really annoying, and it's MVP of this game, the whole match, honestly. It's just crazy card, and they have flying, which is insane. They're like 1/3s. They died a bolt, but That doesn't matter for me. Esper Sentinel, I don't want them drawing a card. They're at like 1, they have enough advantage. Let's like not let them have it. Arguably though, I maybe could have kept that out for the Soul Guide trigger because I have another Soul Guide in hand. Ultimately at this point, I mean, Nettlecyst comes down. It doesn't look like they have the shuffle effect. I mean, I'm only like halfway through their deck, a little bit over that. They did bring in like more than 60 cards at this point. Now Nettlecyst comes down. I'm going to be taking 6, and then they could actually give one of their creatures next turn protection from blue and then swing in that way. So you have to remember, I'm like functionally at 6 right now because they could give the Pure Steel protection and then swing in. Now I don't manage to find anything here. And Engineered Explosives would be absolutely insane on 2 here, but regardless, don't find it. I'm not actually playing any board wipes in my sideboard, so let's make them see the line, let them swing in. It is kind of a more competitive event. They find the Forge Anew and everything though. Like, this is getting ridiculous. Let's just go to our turn. My opponent got me in game 3. They got me on the back foot, but look, I got a Fatal Push, I got some Fractured Sanities, I got a Starting Crab. Now I'm gonna play that out there. They don't really have much removal in this deck, and in this case the Solitude is fine. It's kind of frustrating, but they do lose a card, so they're down on effort that way, and they're gonna swing in. That's perfectly fine. If they have a kind of protection spell here, then so be it. It's a card out of their hand. I'll take some damage, but it's kind of a risk I have to take here. So the Colossus Hammer blanks out. I'm gonna fetch, grab my island here, and then just cast out Fractured Sanity. I have to mill them. Now notably here, I took out my Soul Guide Lanterns, so I didn't see their whole deck. I'm just relying on the fact that they don't have a shuffle effect, and we might be right. Let's see what happens. We play out a Hedron Crab, we play out our island. Don't want to lose too much life if we don't have to. Save the Watery Grave, Fractured Sanity again, and let's see what our opponent does with an Urza Saga by creating a Construct token. Now the Solitude comes down again, which is annoying, but again, they're in 0 cards. This is okay. It's ultimately fine. And if we look at their graveyard right now, they have a lot of things kind of out of there. They're kind of Cauldron Complete, their Nettlecyst, a lot of actually good options. The Pithing Needle's gone, honestly, but the top deck, Ensnaring Bridge, comes in so clutch. I'm telling you, this is a staple card. You cannot replace Ensnaring Bridge. I go to their draw, take out the Giver of Runes because I want removal to work. Honestly, I probably should have just taken the Surge of Salvation, but if you're noticing in their graveyard, they don't really have a Surge. Well, they do right there at the end, but look, folks, it was the right call. I just didn't make the right call, but we're gonna get there. Okay, spoiler alert. Now I Subtlety the Stoneforge Mystic. I just don't want them looking through their deck here. They probably do have another option to grab, especially with like a Colossus Hammer. I draw another Subtlety, which is absolutely hilarious. I have great blockers here. They're gonna play out their Stoneforge again. I'm gonna Subtlety it again. Double blockers. Let's get lit. Our opponent just gives up. They don't want to make this happen, especially my little misplay with the Extirpate. Let's ignore that. Let's go to match number 3. Going into match number 3, I keep a really greedy hand. This one is, I'll hold this one completely. Okay, Preordain has spoiled me. I'm gonna be completely honest. Now my Crab dies, and I don't happen to find a land. I look at the top 5 cards of my library and do not find another land, which is ultimately going to be the reason why I lose here. Now they do fetch, so I can get an Archive Trap off of them, but based on their colors here, this is Orcish Bowmasters. I see the Tarmogoyf, so this isn't Yawgmoth combo. This is some type of mid-range, which isn't great because that means this isn't a great matchup for us. I see the Not Dead After All either, and I'm honestly at this point just shaking in my boots. That means this is some type of grief nonsense. They have the Endurance already. Oh, this is going to be a really tough matchup, isn't it? Let's go to game number 2. Almost like we're playing speed magic. Now I have to maul. I have the double Archive Trap into a Preordain. I'm like, all right, I can hold up the Fatal Push and make something happen here. Honestly, I should have gone the Polluted Delta route, especially if I wanted to work with some removal, but honestly it wouldn't have worked because they're gonna grief, they're gonna then take my Fatal Push, and then they're gonna reanimate, and then they're going to take my Preordain. At this point, I have no options and nothing, and I'm dealing with the most cringe line in modern history that we've been dealing with for so long. And I get it, Fury was the right ban, but this is such a frustrating line to deal with. And another grief, by the way, coming down, and another Not Dead After All. This is probably one of the worst eras of Modern when it comes to just general baseline gameplay because of this card. Let's see if we can pull out the 2. So straight up here, my opponent actually just disconnects. So, I mean, I'm happy it skipped right to the end and the game has ended. It looks like our opponent didn't realize they got matched in. Maybe they had to run to another errand, but no games here. So I managed to pull out what you would call the buy, I guess, for a 2-2, which isn't that bad. I won't complain. It is what it is, but hoping to do more games like this. Again, if you're in the comment section down below, if you're this far into the video, please let me know if you want to see full modern prelims, more prelim gameplay, and maybe if you want to see these live streamed. I would love to see a like on the video, and you gotta let me know. That's the only way I can figure out what you want to see on the channel. Other than that, GG's. Have a great rest of your week. Have a happy new year, and stay frosty, folks.